The roar of the crowd shook the ancient stone walls of the proving grounds, as hundreds of the kingdom's fiercest warriors clashed in brutal combat, each one desperate to claim the Alpha throne left vacant by the fallen king. Meanwhile, in the shadowed corner of the medical tent, Senna knelt over a blood-soaked table, her hands working frantically to stitch a gash across a warrior's chest. She had no lineage to boast, no combat prowess to display. She was merely a field medic from the conquered northern territories, destined only to mend the broken bodies of those who would never notice her. 2 more hours? Senna muttered under her breath, pressing gauze against the wound. Just 2 more hours until this bloodbath ends. The Proving Grounds tournament had been announced 3 weeks ago, immediately following King Aldrich's death in battle. The old king had died without naming a clear successor, and according to ancient law, the throne would be claimed through trial by combat. Hundreds had answered the call. Seasoned generals, noble-born warriors, mercenaries from distant lands, and ambitious upstarts hoping to seize power. Even Cassian, the late king's nephew and former commander of the royal guard, had entered the competition. The tournament had raged for days, and the medical tent had become Senna's entire world, an endless stream of broken bones, torn flesh, and shattered pride. She sat back on her heels, wiping sweat from her brow with the back of her hand, leaving a smear of someone else's blood across her copper skin. Her dark eyes traveled beyond the tent's opening to where the final 16 competitors were preparing for the next round. Among them stood Cassian, the favorite to win, a man whose reputation on the battlefield was matched only by his reputation in the bedchambers of half the noble houses in the kingdom. As if sensing her gaze, Cassian's steel-gray eyes suddenly locked with hers across the crowded grounds, and he offered that infuriating half-smile that made half the kingdom swoon. Senna scowled in response, and returned her attention to bandaging her patient. She was entirely immune to his charms. Or more importantly, entirely committed to appearing immune to his charms, which was far more achievable. As if being the strongest fighter in 7 kingdoms wasn't enough, Cassian had to be devastatingly attractive too, with his dark hair, sharp jaw, and those damn dimples that appeared when he grinned. Not that Senna noticed such things. She absolutely did not notice the way his laugh seemed to carry over the clash of steel, or how something warm and unwanted stirred in her chest whenever he looked her way. Tonight wasn't just about glory or power, per 5. The Council of Elders had made it clear whoever claimed the Alpha throne would need to unite the fractured kingdom, heal the wounds of recent wars, per stand, and restore stability. They needed a king who was not just a warrior, but a leader. Yet as Senna watched Cassian toy with his current opponent, barely breaking a sweat while the other man struggled to keep up, perhaps, she couldn't help but think that perhaps they needed someone who understood suffering, not just how to inflict it. "Medic!" a voice shouted, snapping her from her thoughts. "We need you at the Western Ring." Senna grabbed her medical kit and ran, leaving behind the blood-stained tent and the unsettling feeling that everything was about to change. Senna cursed under her breath as a fighter stumbled backward, nearly crushing her supply cart. His scent, sharp with aggression and testosterone, hit her before his shadow did. "Watch where you're standing, girl," Lord Varric growled, blood dripping from a cut above his eye. "To better dodge your incompetence, my lord." "Why else?" Senna replied sweetly, already pressing a clean cloth to his wound. Varric's face darkened with fury. "How dare you speak to past, Lord Varric?" A familiar voice cut through the tension like a blade through silk. "I believe the council is waiting for your next match." Senna didn't need to turn around to know who stood behind her. Cassian's presence was like a physical force, commanding and impossible to ignore. Varric retreated without another word, and Senna would have considered thanking Cassian for the intervention if he hadn't been so insufferably smug about it. "Well, well," Cassian said, stepping into her line of vision with that maddening grin. "Enjoying the tournament, Wildflower?" Senna pointedly ignored him, organizing her medical supplies with unnecessary precision. She hated that nickname. He'd started calling her that 2 years ago when he'd found her collecting medicinal herbs in the palace gardens, and he absolutely knew she despised it. That's why he never stopped. "That cut on your shoulder coming along as you'd hoped?" Cassian persisted, leaning against her supply table. As Senna continued her silence, She saw movement from the corner of her eye. The next thing she knew, Cassian had deliberately knocked over a bottle of antiseptic, the precious liquid pooling across her work surface. "Oh, how clumsy of me," he said with zero remorse in his voice. "Don't you have people to pummel?" Senna finally snapped. "Like the dozens of warriors who traveled across the continent just to lose to you? They're just not as entertaining as you," Cassian protested. "Besides, I can hardly ask them to stitch me up with such gentle hands, can I? Yet you can hardly keep those hands to yourself around every noble woman in the kingdom," Senna muttered, immediately regretting the words. His eyes gleamed with interest. "And does that bother you, Wildflower?" Prophet. "The only thing that bothers me is having to waste supplies on your reckless fighting style," she said instead, gesturing to the fresh bandage on his ribs from yesterday's match. "For someone who claims to hate watching me fight, you certainly pay close attention to every move I make," Cassian teased. "One might think you were worried about me." Senna flushed hot with embarrassment and anger. "I watch everyone fight. It's my job to anticipate injuries." "Commander Cassian," a voice interrupted. Lady Mirelle, from the western courts, appeared at his side, practically thrusting a water flask into his hands. Quote, "Please, allow me to bring you refreshment before your next match." Senna gaped at the woman, shocked by her utter lack of dignity. Cassian had ended whatever brief dalliance they'd shared months ago. Yet here she was, fawning over him like nothing had happened. Senna would never debase herself like that for any man, potential alpha king or not. "Wildflower," Cassian said, his eyes never leaving Senna's face as he accepted the flask. "Could you fetch me some of that willow bark tea? The one you make for pain?" Senna stood with a grunt. Fine. Maybe she would, but only because it was literally her job to tend to fighters. That was entirely different from Lady Mirelle's shameful display. Entirely. "Can you believe it?" Jory appeared beside her, nervously adjusting his apprentice robes. He was the youngest medic on staff, barely 18 and perpetually anxious. "Our next Alpha King being chosen tonight. Through combat, no less." "I really can't," Senna admitted, grinding the willow bark with more force than necessary. "Oh, aren't you even a little excited?" Jory nudged her. "Think of it, a coronation, celebrations throughout the kingdom." Senna snorted. "That man can't keep his attention on anything for more than a few days. He's not about to lead a kingdom for a lifetime. Look at him, already sparring with someone new," she added, watching as Cassian engaged with his next opponent. "If you ask me, he only does it because he knows you're watching." The words came from Leora, the head healer's assistant, who had slipped in beside them with her usual knowing smile. "He does it because he's an arrogant warrior who needs everyone's worship," Senna shot back. She'd long ago realized that her indifference was the only thing keeping Cassian's attention. If she ever melted under that intense gaze like the others, he'd move on in an instant. And that was exactly what she should want, to be free of his irritating presence and foolish daydreams. And yet, when his eyes found hers across the grounds between matches, Senna knew she'd never stop challenging him. She couldn't bear the thought of those eyes never seeking hers again. 3 fighters left. Meles, the tournament master, announced as the sun began to set over the proving grounds. His voice carried across the bloodied arena through amplification crystals. "Commander Cassian, Commander Dren of the Eastern Legions, and Sir Gavril of House Thornwick. The final trial begins at nightfall." The final trial begins at nightfall. Senna watched from the medical tent as the 3 remaining competitors were led to separate preparation chambers. Protocol demanded a brief rest period before the ultimate challenge, a 3-way combat that would determine the next Alpha King. Something felt wrong. She couldn't place it exactly, but her instincts, honed through years of reading bodies and detecting illness, were screaming warnings. The air itself felt charged, heavy with more than just anticipation. "Senna," Jory called nervously. "Commander Cassian is requesting medical clearance before the final match. Standard protocol." She found Cassian in the fighter's preparation room, stripped to the waist, his torso a canvas of fresh bruises and half-healed cuts from the tournament. But something in his movements caught her attention, a slight tremor in his hands as he reached for his water skin. A glassiness to his eyes that hadn't been there an hour ago. "Cassian," she said, using his name instead of a title for the first time in months. He looked up, surprise flickering across his face. How do you feel? Quote, ready to claim a throne, he said with his usual confidence, but his smile didn't quite reach his eyes. Senna stepped closer, her healer's instincts overriding everything else. You're sweating, but your skin is cold. When did this start? Power. It's nothing. Just, his words slurred slightly. Just nervous, I suppose. You're never nervous, Senna stated flatly. She grabbed his wrist, feeling for his pulse. Too fast. Too erratic. What did you eat? Drink? Who gave it to you? Wildflower. I'm fine, Cassian swayed, catching himself against the wall. His water skin slipped from suddenly limp fingers, clattering to the stone floor. Cassian. Senna lunged forward, but she wasn't fast enough. He collapsed, and she barely managed to guide his fall, cushioning his head as they both went down. His weight drove her to her knees, his body going terrifyingly limp against hers. Stay with me, she whispered, cradling his head in her lap, her fingers instinctively checking his pulse, his breathing. Please, Cassian, stay with me. For a heartbeat, his gray eyes cleared. He looked up at her face with something like wonder, his hand lifting as if to touch her cheek. Then his arm fell, and his eyes rolled back. Healer! Senna screamed, her voice cracking with terror. Lyora! Jory! Anyone! The preparation chamber erupted into chaos. Guards rushed in. Tournament officials shouted conflicting orders, and someone was screaming about assassins and poison. Pade, back away from Commander Cassian, a guard commanded, reaching for Senna's arm. Don't be stupid, Marcus. It's me, she snapped, not taking her eyes off Cassian's too still face. Sorry, Senna. Captain's orders. Tell Captain Riven where he can shove his orders, she snarled. But more guards were already surrounding them, forming a protective barrier. Through the chaos, Senna heard Melis's voice, booming orders: seal the grounds. No one leaves, summon the council. Competitors protested, nobles demanded answers, and someone was crying about the kingdom falling into chaos. None of it mattered. Senna's gaze stayed fixed on Cassian's face, her heart hammering against her ribs so hard she thought it might shatter. Her grandmother's training echoed in her mind. Observe, assess, act. She pressed 2 fingers to his neck, steady pulse, thank the gods. His forehead was cool but not dangerously so. No discoloration in his lips or under his nails. His breathing was even almost peaceful. He wasn't dying, he was sleeping. But this wasn't natural sleep. The sudden onset, the complete loss of consciousness, the timing right before the final match, this was deliberate. Cassian, she whispered, squeezing his hand. Can you hear me? Squeeze my fingers if you can. Nothing. Lyora pushed through the crowd, her experienced eyes immediately scanning Cassian's condition. What happened? He collapsed suddenly, Senna said, her voice steadier than she felt. Disorientation, tremors, then complete loss of consciousness, but his vitals are stable. Too stable. Lyora's expression darkened with understanding. This isn't illness. No, Senna agreed grimly. This is magic. As Lyora examined Cassian, Senna's eyes caught on the water skin that had fallen from his hand. She ducked past the guards and snatched it up, bringing it to her nose. Beneath the plain water's scent was something else, something floral and cloyingly sweet, with an underlying bitterness that made her wolf instincts recoil. Tracking scents was her gift, even if she'd never been allowed to join the King's Guard like she'd dreamed. King Aldrich had forbidden women from military service, claiming they were too weak for combat roles. By the time he died, Senna had already resigned herself to medicine, but no one in the kingdom could match her nose. She scanned the crowded chamber, her senses heightened, searching for that same sickly sweet smell. Her gaze landed on Lady Myrelle near the doorway, wringing her hands, her eyes wide with what looked like genuine distress. Their eyes met. Myrelle's widened further. It was her, Senna shouted, pointing. She poisoned him. Lady Myrelle gave him that water flask earlier. The chamber froze into shocked silence. It's not what you think, Myrelle cried, her voice rising in panic. He's going to be fine. I can help him. Melis stepped forward, his weathered face carved into deep lines of fury. Wait, are you confessing to drugging Commander Cassian? Yes, Mirel blurted, then backpedaled frantically. No, well, not exactly. Not drugging. Just, not exactly? Captain Riven's hand went to his sword. Explain, now. Senna seized Mirel by the shoulders, her legendary composure cracking. What does that mean? What did you do to him? Is he dying? He's sleeping. Leora's calm voice cut through the rising hysteria. The head healer looked up from her examination, her face grave. His body shows no signs of distress, no elevated heart rate, no labored breathing, no toxin response. This is enchanted sleep. Enchanted. Senna's mind reeled. Quote, You used magic on him? During the tournament for the Alpha Throne? I didn't mean any harm, Mirel insisted, tears streaming down her face. I would never hurt him. I love him. The words hit Senna like a physical blow, sharp and unexpected. Love? She heard herself say, her voice dangerous and low. You drugged him at the most important moment of his life, and you call that love? My intentions were pure, Mirel protested, her voice taking on a desperate edge, driven only by the deepest devotion. The very idea that this woman could speak of love after what she'd done made Senna's wolf want to tear through the tent and into the night, screaming. All right, Malus interrupted, stepping between them before Senna could do something she'd regret. Par. Lady Mirel, perhaps you could explain why you administered an enchanted sleeping spell to the tournament's leading competitor? Mirel lowered her gaze, her tears catching in the torchlight. It's not exactly a sleeping spell, she said softly. Senna lunged forward, fingers curled into claws, but Captain Riven caught her around the waist. It's a bonding spell, Mirel added hastily. Another beat of silence, then an explosion of voices. A bonding spell? That's illegal. She's trying to force a mate bond with Commander Cassian. The last accusation came from Commander Dren, who pointed at Mirel with the outrage of a competitor who just realized he might win by default. Everyone shut up! Senna roared, her voice carrying the commanding tone of someone who'd spent years managing chaos in field hospitals during wartime. Surprisingly, the room fell silent. You. Senna snapped her fingers at Meles. Get the council's mage advisor here immediately. We need to know exactly what spell was used and how to counter it. I can tell you right now. Mirel jumped in eagerly. Parsity to you, Senna. Cut her off, pointing to Captain Riven. I want a full investigation into how someone smuggled illegal magic into a royal tournament under your supposedly watchful eyes. The captain nodded, looking appropriately chastened. Shouldn't we put someone more qualified in charge? Lord Varric interjected from the back of the crowd, eyeing Senna with obvious disdain. She's just a medic from conquered territories. Approving murmurs rippled through some of the nobles. Senna approached Varric slowly, her wolf senses detecting the spike in his heartbeat that indicated nervousness despite his bold words. Did you help Lady Mirel harm Commander Cassian? She asked, meeting his gaze directly. What? Of course not. Then why is your pulse racing? Senna interrupted, crossing her arms. Varric swallowed visibly. I merely meant that surely Commander Cassian would prefer someone of proper station to handle his affairs. You'd be surprised, Jory muttered under his breath. Malus sighed heavily, pulling Senna aside as the crowd's murmurs grew louder. He has a point, he whispered when she approached. Not about your competence. Gods know you're probably the most capable person in this entire grounds. But think of how this looks in front of the other competitors, the noble houses, the foreign delegations. You're not nobility. You're not part of the tournament structure. We have enough of a crisis without adding fuel to political fires. Senna clenched her jaw, hating that he was right. This was already unprecedented. A tournament interrupted. The leading competitor incapacitated. Accusations of magical interference. Having a medic from conquered territories apparently in charge would only create more problems. Fine, she said tightly, but I'm not leaving his side. I'll tell you everything. Mirel interjected, her voice carrying across the chamber. Everything about the spell, including how to wake him. Senna's head snapped toward her. How to wake him? You mean he won't just wake naturally when the spell wears off? Another long, terrible silence fell over the room. Well, not exactly, Mirel admitted, her confidence wavering. Senna screamed and lunged for her again. Only Captain Riven's quick reflexes preventing her from reaching the noblewoman. But it's going to be fine, Mirel insisted, backing away slightly. Really, this is a bonding spell, so Commander Cassian will wake through an act of true connection, power fin. When her announcement was met with blank stares, she clarified, he must be kissed by the woman he's destined to bond with, his true mate. Senna's stomach dropped to her feet. His true mate, she repeated slowly, the words feeling like broken glass in her mouth. But he's never shown genuine interest in anyone beyond a few nights. How are we supposed to determine who his true mate is? Mirel tossed her hair back, confidence radiating from her posture despite her tears. The spell wouldn't have worked if he didn't have a true mate somewhere. Which, of course, is me. Prove what, exactly? Captain Riven demanded, his hand still on his sword. Mirel's expression transformed into passionate sincerity as she addressed the stunned crowd. Cassian and I share a connection, she declared, her voice carrying throughout the chamber. We have for months, Pod. But because the council, she shot a venomous glare toward the group of robed elders who'd just arrived, insisted he focus solely on the tournament and matters of state, he was forced to push me away. That's not what happened, one of the council members began. I did this, Mirel interrupted, to prove to him and to all of you the truth of our bond. Surely you can't expect him to take the throne without his true mate by his side. Magic doesn't lie. The chamber erupted into chaos once more. Meanwhile, Senna stood frozen, a cold dread spreading through her chest. Was Cassian condemned to sleep forever? And even if he wasn't, what if Mirel was right? What if he did care for her and had simply hidden it due to political pressure? As people parted to let Mirel approach Cassian's unconscious form, Senna felt her heart constrict with an entirely different fear. What if this worked? Everyone, please. Milas called for order. Let us see if Lady Mirel speaks truth. The entire room watched in tense silence as the lady knelt gracefully beside Cassian. She looked like something from a painting, beautiful, noble, perfect. Everything Senna wasn't. My love, Mirel whispered, loud enough for the front rows to hear. I'll bring you back to us. She bent down and pressed her lips to Cassian's in a careful, sweet kiss. The room held its collective breath as she lingered there, her hand resting on his chest. Slowly, she pulled back, her expression expectant. But Cassian remained motionless, his breathing unchanged, his eyes closed in enchanted sleep. Mirel frowned, doubt flickering across her features. Perhaps you need to put more emotion into it, suggested Elder Yara from the council, her ancient voice carrying surprising pragmatism. Mirel tried again, this time cupping Cassian's face between her palms and kissing him with obvious passion. When she pulled away, he was as deeply asleep as before. A ripple of murmurs passed through the crowd while Senna, who had been holding her breath without realizing it, slowly exhaled. Relief warred with confusion in her chest. If Commander Cassian's mate isn't Lady Mirel, Malis said slowly, then who is it? Dozens of pairs of eyes turned toward the gathered noblewomen, ladies from various courts, competitors' sisters and daughters, foreign dignitaries. Each one straightened her posture, adjusted her hair, checked her appearance. This was going to be a very long night. The preparation chamber had transformed from a warrior's sanctuary into a bizarre spectacle. Cassian had been moved to a cushioned pallet, and Senna stood at his side, self-appointed guardian and unofficial coordinator of what had become the most humiliating event she'd ever witnessed. Power. Lady Helena of the Southern Isles will attempt first, Malis announced, consulting a hastily compiled list. Senna narrowed her eyes at the approaching blonde. This is absurd, she muttered. She's never even spoken a word to Cassian. It's Commander Cassian to you, Malis corrected automatically. And how would you know who he has or hasn't been acquainted with, Croats? I know everyone he's been acquainted with, Senna replied, crossing her arms defensively. Over the years, she'd created an intricate intelligence network within the palace. Jory told her who Cassian trained with. The kitchen staff reported who he dined with. The servants whispered about who caught his eye. She'd even befriended the keeper of the royal correspondence. The keeper of correspondence lets you do what? Malis spluttered. It's for his own good, Senna replied, her attention already shifting to a noblewoman with auburn hair attempting to cut ahead in line. Back of the line, Isolde. He doesn't like you. As the First Lady approached, Senna's mind raced through her mental catalogue of Cassian's romantic history. What if one of them actually was his true mate? What if the spell worked, and she had to watch him wake up and smile at someone else? Whoa, whoa, whoa. Senna intervened as the lady, kneeling beside Cassian, reached for his hand with both of hers. You're meant to kiss him, not dislocate his shoulder. I'm just… Hands to yourself, Senna snapped. Bad enough that he'd been involved with half these women when conscious and willing. Watching them take liberties, while he lay helpless, made her want to bare her teeth and growl. As the lady leaned forward toward Cassian's lips, Senna added sharply, on the cheek. The lady paused. I thought, on the cheek, Senna repeated firmly. No one gave you permission to share saliva with him. The woman lowered her mouth toward Cassian's face. For 3 seconds, not more, Senna added, as the lady's lips made contact with his skin. For the love of the lady, exclaimed, pulling back in frustration. Time's up, Senna said, practically hauling her away. Oh, and look at that, he's still asleep. What a pity. Next. Prakli Radis lives and ours. And so it continued, lady after lady, noblewoman after noblewoman. With each woman who bent over Cassian, Senna's control frayed further. No touching his hair, she barked as a duchess's fingers drifted too close to his dark locks. The panic was driving her mad. What if they never found the right woman? What if Cassian remained in this enchanted sleep forever? Or worse, what if Cassian's heart belonged to someone they hadn't considered? A memory surfaced. One Senna hated remembering. A conversation she'd overheard 3 years ago, between Cassian and King Aldrich. She'd been bringing medical supplies to the king's private quarters, when raised voices from the study made her pause. Is this a joke? King Aldrich had demanded. A common girl from conquered territories with no noble blood, no political value, no strategic advantage? I Emeriti. So did he stay, and he will say, there is nothing common about her. Cassian had replied, his voice raw with emotion Senna had never heard before. She's brilliant, compassionate, stronger than half my warriors. Quote, she's a healer, the king had interrupted with disgust. Not even a proper wolf warrior. Just someone who patches up the wounded. She means everything to me, Cassian had said, and his tone he'd been serious then. Senna had known just from that tone, and it had pierced her heart. Because everyone in the palace knew about Cassian's relationship with Brynn, a beautiful apprentice healer who'd worked in the medical tents during the northern campaigns. You're an embarrassment, King Aldrich had snapped, and I swear, if you don't abandon this foolish notion of bonding with her, I'll have her transferred to the remotest outpost in the kingdom, where you'll never see her again. Shortly after that overheard conversation, Brynn had been sent to the eastern mountain fortress, and Cassian had changed. His easy confidence had hardened into something more reckless. His focused determination had taken on an edge of cynicism, and he'd begun bringing home a parade of noble women, none lasting more than a week. What if all this time, all these women, had just been his attempt to forget about her, about Brynn? That's the last one, Malis announced, checking his list as the final noblewoman stepped away from Cassian. Every eligible woman present has attempted to wake Commander Cassian. A heavy silence fell over the chamber, as all eyes turned to Cassian, who remained as peacefully asleep as before. Well, what do we do now? Someone asked. Senna's throat tightened. I think, she said slowly, forcing the words out, I might know who his true mate is. Several heads turned her way. Finally, Captain Riven sighed in relief. I was wondering when you'd… I think it's Brynn, Senna said, the name tasting like ash in her mouth. The healer who served during the northern campaigns 3 years ago, Power and Harity. The council members exchanged uncomfortable glances, clearly remembering the incident. It's worth trying, Maelys said finally. We can send riders to the eastern mountain fortress immediately. Senna nodded, her heart like lead in her chest. I'll draft the message myself. If bringing Bryn back meant saving Cassian, then she would do it, even if it destroyed her in the process. The wait was excruciating. Senna refused to leave the preparation chamber, maintaining a vigil beside Cassian's unconscious form, while the tournament grounds buzzed with speculation and chaos. Council. The council had postponed the final match indefinitely. The other two competitors, Commander Dren and Sir Gavril, were being held in comfortable quarters but essentially under guard until the situation resolved. 12 hours after the riders departed, they returned with Bryn. Senna watched from her position beside Cassian as the healer entered, escorted by guards and council members. Bryn was still pretty in that delicate, ethereal way. Silver blonde hair, pale blue eyes, graceful movements. Everything Senna wasn't. "Thank you for coming so quickly," Malis said formally. Bryn's eyes swept the chamber before landing on Cassian's still form, and something like genuine concern crossed her face. What happened to him? Senna found herself explaining the situation, the bonding spell, the requirement for a true mate's kiss, why they'd thought of her. Me? Bryn looked genuinely shocked. You think I'm his true mate? We have reason to believe Commander Cassian had strong feelings for you, Elder Yara said carefully. 3 years ago. Understanding dawned on Bryn's face, followed quickly by something that looked like pity. Oh no. You thought, she looked at Senna. You overheard the argument with King Aldrich, didn't you? Senna nodded stiffly. And you assumed Cassian was talking about me, Bryn said softly. It wasn't a question. Before Senna could respond, the chamber doors burst open. 2 guards entered, dragging a struggling man in foreign diplomatic robes between them. Captain Riven, one guard announced. We found this man attempting to flee the grounds. He's Ambassador Torian from the Westmarch territories. I have diplomatic immunity, Torian protested, but his voice shook. We also found these, the other guard said, holding up several small vials filled with shimmering liquid, hidden in his quarters. Captain Riven took one of the vials, unstoppered it, and held it under Senna's nose. The sickly sweet scent was unmistakable, the same as what had been in Cassian's water. Talk, the captain commanded. Now, Torian's composure crumbled under the weight of hostile stares. I was following orders, he finally said. From Princess Katerina of Westmarch. She, Commander Cassian, rejected her advances last year, publicly, in front of her entire court. He rejected many people, Malis said flatly. That hardly justifies this. You don't understand, Torian continued, his words coming faster now. Princess Katerina wasn't just rejected. She'd fallen in love with him after seeing him compete in the grand tournament. She wrote him letters, sent gifts, even traveled here to meet him, and he laughed. He told her he could never bond with someone he didn't respect as an equal warrior. Senna's stomach twisted. That sounded exactly like something Cassian would say. Her father, our king, was humiliated, Torian went on. His daughter heartbroken, his kingdom's pride wounded. And for what? So Cassian could continue his dalliances with anyone who caught his eye? So he could compete for the Alpha throne without any real attachments? So you decided to incapacitate him during the most important trial of his life? Elder Yara's voice was ice. We decided to teach him a lesson, Torian corrected, about what it means to truly care for someone. Malis stepped forward. Explain. Torian looked at Mirelle, who'd been standing quietly in the corner. Lady Mirelle was easy to manipulate. She genuinely believed Cassian cared for her, that he'd sent her away due to political pressure. I simply encouraged those beliefs and provided the means to prove their bond. The spell, Senna said slowly, pieces falling into place, wasn't designed to prove Commander Cassian loved someone, Torian finished. It was designed to prove whether anyone truly loved him. Now, a heavy silence fell over the chamber. You mean, Leora said slowly, that to wake him with an act of true bonding, the person kissing him would have to truly love Commander Cassian? Not the other way around? Precisely, Torian said, looking pleased despite his predicament. And as we've all witnessed tonight, none of these noblewomen do. They love the idea of being queen, of bonding with a powerful warrior, of the status and security he represents, but none of them love him. So you've essentially murdered him, Captain Riven growled. We have not, Torian assured him hastily, real fear entering his voice for the first time. The spell is temporary. If no one breaks it, he'll wake naturally in 2 months. Perfectly healthy, just. Aware of how little he means to anyone. 2 months. Long enough for the kingdom to fall into chaos without a clear leader. Long enough for Cassian to wake to public humiliation. It was clever. Low risk, high stakes, perfectly designed to wound without killing. Unless... The word hung in the air like bait. Unless what? Meles demanded. Unless someone who truly loves him kisses him before then, Torian said. Of course, given what we've witnessed tonight, that seems unlikely. Unless. His eyes drifted toward Senna with calculating interest. Don't, she said flatly. Don't what? Don't suggest that the healer who's barely left his side, who knows his every habit and preference, who created an entire intelligence network just to keep track of him, might harbor feelings beyond professional duty. Senna felt every eye in the chamber turn toward her. Her face burned hot with embarrassment and anger. That's absurd, she said, but her voice shook. Is it? Torian pressed. Then prove it. Kiss him. Show everyone that you're just a dedicated healer with no personal attachment. This is ridiculous, Senna protested. I'm not part of this circus. Senna, Bryn said gently, and something in her tone made Senna look at her. The other healer's eyes were kind, knowing. You didn't let me finish earlier. The argument you overheard, Cassian wasn't talking about me. The world seemed to tilt sideways. What? Senna whispered. He was talking about you, Bryn said simply. It was always you. No, Senna said immediately, taking a step backward. That's not it, can't be. It was always you, Bryn repeated patiently. The healer from conquered territories King Aldrich was so furious about? The woman Cassian wanted to bond with despite the political complications? That was you, Senna. But you and he, the rumors, started deliberately, Bryn said. Cassian asked me to help him. He wanted to test his father's reaction without putting you at risk. I agreed because... She smiled sadly. Because even I could see how much he loved you. How he still loves you. Senna shook her head, refusing to accept it. He doesn't love me. He's never said anything. Never indicated. Oh, for the love of the gods, Jory burst out, his usual nervousness replaced by exasperation. Everyone knows, everyone except apparently you. The poor thing is scared, Leora observed gently. After years of watching him with other women, thinking he'd never see her as anything but a medic, she's terrified of being wrong. I am not scared, Senna snapped, but her hands were shaking. My dear Elder Yara said, her ancient voice surprisingly soft. I've been observing the two of you for 3 years. Since King Aldrich died and Cassian could have pursued you openly, do you know why he didn't? Senna couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, because you'd built walls so high around your heart that he didn't know how to reach you. Yara continued. Every time he tried to get close, you pushed him away, mocked him, treated him with disdain. He thought you despised him. However, I was protecting myself, Senna whispered. From what? From this. The words burst out of her. From hoping and being disappointed. From loving someone who could never truly choose me. I'm a healer from conquered lands, a woman who couldn't even join the king's guard because the old king thought I was too weak. What could someone like me possibly offer the greatest warrior in 7 kingdoms? The man who's about to become Alpha King? The truth spilled out of her like poison from a wound. He flirts with everyone. He beds noble women and princesses and warriors who are his equals. Beautiful, powerful women with titles and lands and strategic value. What am I next to that? Patches. Just a medic who patches people up and knows how to track scents. Just? Captain Riven repeated incredulously. Senna, you've saved more lives than most of us have taken in battle. You've developed new healing techniques that are being taught across the kingdom. You have the respect of every warrior who's ever been under your care. And Cassian doesn't care about titles or lands, Bryn added. He never has. He cares about strength, real strength. The kind that faces death every day and still chooses compassion. The kind that challenges him and pushes back and refuses to be impressed by his reputation. Senna said, her voice breaking. Why didn't he just tell me? He's the strongest warrior alive. What was stopping him? You were, Melis said bluntly. Every time he tried to be sincere, you mocked him. Every time he sought you out, you pushed him away. Every time he looked at you with something real in his eyes, you turned your back. What was he supposed to think? Senna felt tears burning behind her eyes. I thought he was playing with me, like he played with everyone else. He paraded those women around to make you jealous, promises, Leora said. It was obvious to everyone but you. He wanted you to care, to show some sign that his attention mattered to you. Of course it mattered, Senna whispered. It destroyed me every time. Then kiss him, Elder Yara said simply. If there's even a chance you can save him, why wouldn't you try? Because if she kissed him and it didn't work, then she'd have to face the truth that her love wasn't enough. That even loving him with everything she had couldn't bridge the gap between what she was and what he needed. And if it did work, if she kissed him and he woke up, then everyone would know. Her carefully guarded secret, the feelings she'd hidden for years, would be exposed for all to see. I can't, she said. I can't do this. You can, Jory said firmly. You're the bravest person I know, Senna. You've faced down battlefield wounds that would make most healers faint. You've stood up to nobles and warriors and even King Aldrich himself. You can do this. What if he doesn't wake up? The question came out small, broken. What if I kiss him and nothing happens, and everyone knows I love him but I'm not enough? Then we'll deal with it, Captain Riven said. But at least you'll have tried. Senna looked at Cassian's peaceful face, memorizing every detail. The strong line of his jaw, the dark lashes against his cheeks. The small scar above his left eyebrow from a training accident when they were younger. She thought about all the times she'd imagined kissing him. Late at night, when she was alone, when she could admit in the darkness what she'd never say in daylight. How many times had she dreamed of this moment, only to wake with the bitter taste of impossibility on her tongue? As long as she never tried, she could still hope. She could still tell herself that maybe, just maybe, he cared for her too. But if she tried and failed, even that small hope would die. Fine, she heard herself say. I'll do it. She took a step toward Cassian. Then another. Her heart was hammering so hard she thought it might burst through her ribs. She knelt beside him, looking down at his face. In sleep, he looked younger, vulnerable. The arrogant mask was gone, leaving only the boy who'd once shared his field rations with her during the Northern Campaign. Who'd stayed up all night beside her when her grandmother died. Who'd argued with his father for the right to choose his own mate. Senna leaned forward, her lips inches from his. The door burst open. Princess Katerina has arrived from Westmarch, a guard announced breathlessly. She's demanding to see Commander Cassian immediately. Senna jerked back from Cassian as if burned, and Captain Riven unleashed a string of curses that would have made even the most hardened warrior blush. Princess Katerina has what? Maelis demanded. She's here, the guard repeated, looking apologetic. With a full diplomatic escort, she says she's come to fulfill the terms of the spell. Torian's face went pale. She wasn't supposed to, this wasn't part of the plan. Let me guess, Elder Yara said dryly. Princess Katerina was supposed to arrive after Cassian woke naturally in 2 months, humiliated and alone, making her generous offer to accept him despite his public embarrassment? The ambassador's silence was answer enough. Well, Senna said, standing abruptly and brushing off her knees with forced brightness. That's convenient timing. Let her in. Senna. Bryn started. No, really, Senna interrupted, her walls slamming back into place. A princess from a powerful kingdom who actually loves him? Sounds perfect. Problem solved. You can't be serious, Jory protested. Why not? I'm just a medic. This is clearly above my station. The bitterness in her voice was impossible to hide. Before anyone could argue further, the doors opened again, and Princess Katerina swept in. She was stunning, tall and regal, with dark hair and amber eyes, wearing armor that managed to be both functional and elegant. A warrior princess, exactly the kind of equal Cassian had always claimed to want. Senna felt something crack in her chest. Commander Cassian, Katerina said, her voice catching as she saw him unconscious. Whatever Senna had expected, it wasn't the genuine anguish that crossed the princess's face. What have they done to you? She rushed to his side, and Senna found herself stepping back, making room. Because of course, this beautiful, powerful warrior princess was the answer. Of course Senna had been fooling herself. Your Highness, Malus said carefully, we've been informed about the spell's nature. If you truly— I know what's required, Katerina interrupted. She knelt beside Cassian, her hand hovering over his face with surprising tenderness. I know he rejected me. I know he probably doesn't even remember my name. Her voice dropped to a whisper. But I've loved him since I first saw him fight. The way he moves, like violence and grace combined. The way he laughs. The way he treats everyone highborn or low, with the same respect if they earn it. Senna's vision blurred with tears she refused to shed. I wrote him letters he never answered, Katerina continued. I sent gifts he returned. I traveled here and he told me I wasn't his equal, because I led with my title instead of my sword. She laughed bitterly. He was right. I expected him to be impressed by my crown. He wasn't. She leaned closer to Cassian, and Senna forced herself to watch. This was good. This was right. A warrior princess who truly loved him, who could rule beside him, who could give him everything Senna never could. Katerina pressed her lips to Cassian's. Senna held her breath, waiting for the moment when he would wake, when his eyes would open and find the princess leaning over him. When her worst fears would be confirmed. Seconds ticked by. Katerina pulled back slowly, confusion flickering across her face. Cassian remained perfectly still, trapped in his enchanted sleep. I don't understand, Katerina whispered. I do love him. I know I do. Perhaps? Leora said gently, you love the idea of him, the warrior, the legend, the challenge. But do you love who he actually is? Katerina looked stricken. I don't know who he actually is. We barely spoke. Then it won't work, Elder Yara said simply. The spell requires true, deep love, the kind built on knowing someone's flaws and choosing them anyway. Katerina stood, tears streaming down her face. She looked at Senna directly. You know him. It wasn't a question. I know he hates sweet wine but drinks it at diplomatic functions because he thinks refusing is rude, Senna heard herself say. I know he sharpens his sword when he's anxious and can't sleep. I know he visits the training grounds at dawn because that's when his uncle used to train him, and he misses it. I know he's terrified of failing the kingdom, of not being the leader they need. I know he pretends injuries don't hurt because he thinks showing pain makes him weak, she continued, words flowing like a dam breaking. I know he remembers every warrior who dies under his command, and visits their families personally. I know he learned field medicine because he couldn't stand feeling helpless when people he cared about were wounded. Senna looked at Cassian's sleeping face. I know he calls me Wildflower because the first time we met, I had flowers in my hair from gathering herbs, and he said they suited me better than any crown. I know he drinks the bitter willow bark tea I make, even though he hates it because he knows I worry about his old injuries. Her voice broke. I know he argued with his uncle about me, that he was willing to give up everything, the throne, his position, everything because he thought I was worth it. And I know I've spent 3 years pushing him away because I was too scared to believe any of that was real. The chamber had gone completely silent. So yes, Senna said, meeting Katerina's eyes, I know him, and I love him, and I've wasted so much time being afraid. She turned back to Cassian, no longer caring who was watching. She'd already exposed everything. What did she have left to lose? I love you, she whispered, kneeling beside him and cradling his face in her hands. I've loved you since you stayed with me through the night watch during the plague outbreak, since you made me laugh during the worst battle of the war, since you looked at me like I was the only person in the world who mattered. She leaned down, pressing her forehead to his. I love you, and I'm sorry I was too scared to say it. I'm sorry I pushed you away. I'm sorry for every moment I wasted. And then she kissed him. It wasn't like the other kisses she'd witnessed tonight, hesitant and uncertain. This was desperate and honest, and full of 3 years of longing and fear and hope. She felt it the moment the spell broke, a surge of energy that made her gasp. Cassian's hand came up to cradle the back of her head, his fingers threading through her hair as he kissed her back. His eyes opened, gray and clear and full of wonder. Wildflower, he breathed against her lips. Senna pulled back slightly, barely able to believe it. You're awake. Because of you, he said, his voice rough with sleep and emotion. His hand cupped her cheek, thumb brushing away tears she hadn't realized were falling. Always because of you. Around them, the chamber erupted in noise, cheers, and exclamations, and probably a lot of political discussions she should care about. But all Senna could see was Cassian, awake and alive and looking at her like she'd hung the stars. I love you too, he said. In case that wasn't clear, I've loved you for 3 years, longer probably. And I'm going to keep loving you whether you want me to or not. Senna laughed, the sound half sob. I want you to. Good, Cassian said, sitting up and pulling her into his arms. Because I'm not letting you go. Not ever. We should probably deal with the political situation, Senna said weakly, even as she melted into his embrace. In a minute, Cassian murmured against her hair. Right now, I just want to hold the woman who saved my life, the woman I love, my true mate. And for once, Senna didn't argue. 2 days had passed since the night of the spell, and Senna was hiding in the medical supply room for the 3rd time that day. It wasn't that she regretted kissing Cassian, or that she regretted the public declaration of love, or even that she regretted the fact that apparently the entire kingdom now knew she was Cassian's true mate. Well, maybe she regretted that last part a little. The problem was that breaking the spell had somehow made everything more complicated instead of less. The tournament was still unresolved. Consensus. The council wanted immediate meetings about succession and the mate bond. Princess Katerina's father was demanding diplomatic reparations. Ambassador Torian was in the dungeons, and Cassian kept trying to talk to her. Quote, Senna. Jory's voice came through the supply room door. I know you're in there. I'm taking inventory, she called back. You've taken inventory 3 times today. It's very thorough inventory. Commander Cassian is looking for you again. Senna's heart did that annoying flutter thing it had been doing constantly since the kiss. Tell him I'm busy. I already did, he said, and I quote, Tell Wildflower that if she doesn't stop hiding from me, I'm going to start intentionally injuring myself just to force medical consultations. Despite everything, Senna smiled. That sounded exactly like something Cassian would do. Fine, she sighed, emerging from the supply room. Where is he? The council chamber. They're discussing the tournament resolution. Senna's stomach sank. Right, because beyond everything else, there was still the matter of the Alpha Throne. The council chamber was filled with the kingdom's most important people. The Elder Council, high-ranking warriors, noble representatives, and the 2 other tournament finalists. Cassian stood at the center, looking every inch the leader he was born to be. His eyes found hers the moment she entered, and his entire expression softened. Senna tried to slip into an inconspicuous position along the wall, but Cassian had other ideas. Senna, he said, his voice carrying across the chamber. Come here. Every eye turned to her. She considered refusing, but the look on his face made her move forward despite her reluctance. We were just discussing the tournament's conclusion, Elder Yara said, her ancient eyes twinkling with amusement. Given the unusual circumstances, the spell interference invalidates the tournament, Commander Dren said firmly. We should start over. That would take weeks, Sir Gavril protested. The kingdom needs a leader now. Commander Cassian was clearly winning before the interference. Another council member pointed out. Perhaps we should simply declare him the victor. That sets a dangerous precedent, someone else argued. The debate raged on, and Senna found herself tensing with each argument. Cassian's hand found hers, his fingers lacing through hers with surprising gentleness for someone who could crush stones with his bare hands. Quote, What do you think? He murmured, low enough that only she could hear. Me? I'm just a... Don't, he interrupted, his voice sharp. Don't say you're just anything. Your opinion matters. To me, it always matters. Senna looked up at him, at this warrior who could have anyone who was about to become Alpha King. who'd just spent 2 days trying to talk to her while she hid in supply closets. I think, she said slowly, that you don't need a tournament to prove you're the best leader. Everyone already knows it. You just need to prove you want it. Cassian smiled, that real smile that made her heart stutter. He turned to the council. I want to make a statement, he announced, his voice carrying the authority of someone born to command. The chamber fell silent. I'll withdraw from the tournament, Cassian said. Chaos erupted immediately. Shouts of protest, confusion, anger. Senna gripped his hand tighter, her eyes wide. What are you doing? She whispered urgently. Trust me, he murmured back. Let him speak. Elder Yara's voice cut through the noise. I'll withdraw from the tournament, Cassian repeated, on one condition, that the selection process be reformed to include trials beyond just combat, leadership, strategy, diplomacy, wisdom, and that when a new alpha is chosen, whether it's me or someone else, they be allowed to select their mate based on love, not political advantage. He looked directly at Senna. Because the kingdom doesn't just need a warrior on the throne, it needs someone who understands that true strength comes in many forms. Someone who knows that the people who patch us up after battle are just as valuable as those who fight in it. Senna's eyes burned with tears. And if I'm chosen, Cassian continued, addressing the council but never taking his eyes off Senna, my mate will be the woman who saved my life. The woman who saved countless lives. The woman who's stronger than any warrior I've ever met, even if she's never held a sword. This is unprecedented, someone protested. Good, Cassian said flatly. King Aldrich's reign was built on outdated traditions that excluded half our population from serving in ways that suited their strengths. If I'm going to lead this kingdom, we're going to do better. Elder Yara smiled, looking more pleased than Senna had ever seen her. I believe Commander Cassian has just demonstrated exactly the kind of leadership we need. Does anyone object to declaring him our Alpha King? Commander Dren stepped forward. I withdraw my claim. Commander Cassian has my support. And mine, Sir Gavril added. One by one, the others voiced their agreement. Then it's settled, Elder Yara declared. We have our new Alpha King. And apparently, she added with a pointed look at Senna, our new queen. Senna's knees went weak. Wait, what? Did I forget to mention that part? Malice? Cassian asked innocently, though his eyes danced with mischief. Sorry, Wildflower. You're stuck with me now. After the council session, Cassian practically dragged Senna to the royal gardens, away from prying eyes and political discussions. Pertwere. We need to talk, he said firmly. Persis. You just made me a queen in front of the entire council without asking. Senna shot back. I think we're past talking. Then let me explain, Cassian said, turning to face her. Please. There was something in his voice, a vulnerability she'd never heard before, that made her stop trying to pull away. I meant what I said in there, Cassian began. Every word. But I need you to understand why I spent 3 years acting like an idiot instead of just telling you how I felt. You mean the parade of noble women? Senna tried to keep the bitterness from her voice. After my uncle sent Bryn away as a warning, Cassian said quietly, I realized he'd never let me be with you, not while he lived, so I had 2 choices, give you up or wait him out. You chose to wait, Senna said softly. I chose to protect you, Cassian corrected, by making sure my uncle never suspected how I really felt, by building a reputation as someone who didn't care deeply about anyone, by being exactly what he wanted, a warrior focused only on power and duty. He ran a hand through his hair, frustration evident in every line of his body. And then he died. And I thought, finally I could tell you the truth. But you'd built walls so high, Wildflower. Every time I tried to be genuine, you mocked me. Every time I tried to get close, you pushed me away. You looked at me like I was just another arrogant warrior playing games. Power. Because that's what I thought you were, Senna admitted, quote, I heard you arguing with your uncle about a healer from conquered territories, and I saw Bryn being sent away, and I assumed that I was talking about her, Cassian finished, not about you. I spent 3 years thinking I was just another person in the palace to you, Senna said, her voice breaking. Someone convenient to annoy. Maybe convenient to bed if you got bored enough, but never someone you'd actually choose. Cassian cupped her face in his hands, forcing her to meet his eyes. You've never been convenient. You've been everything. You've been the reason I learned field medicine, because I couldn't stand watching you work yourself to exhaustion during battles. You've been the reason I fought so hard in the tournament because I wanted to be worthy of you. You've been the reason I've stayed sane through all of this political nonsense. Then why all the other women? The question burst out of her. Even after your uncle died, even when you could have just told me the truth. Cassian's expression turned sheepish. Because I'm an idiot? Despite everything, Senna laughed. Because I was terrified, he admitted more seriously. Because I'd spent 3 years watching you treat me with indifference, and I thought maybe you really didn't care. Maybe I'd been wrong about the way you looked at me sometimes. So I kept trying to make you jealous, trying to get some reaction that proved you felt something. It worked, Senna said quietly. Every time I saw you with someone else, it destroyed me. I just got very good at hiding it. Too good, Cassian said ruefully. I was starting to think I'd have to do something drastic. Like, get myself cursed with an enchanted sleep, just to see if you'd care enough to save me. Don't even joke about that, Senna said, hitting his chest lightly. Do you know how terrifying it was? Watching you collapse, not knowing if you'd wake up, having to watch woman after woman kiss you while I stood there pretending I didn't care? I'm sorry, Cassian said, and the sincerity in his voice made her chest tight. I'm sorry for every moment I made you doubt how I felt. I'm sorry for every woman I paraded past you. I'm sorry for not being brave enough to just tell you the truth. I'm sorry too, Senna whispered, for pushing you away, for being so scared of being hurt that I hurt us both instead, for wasting so much time. We have time now, Cassian said, pulling her closer. All the time in the world if you'll have me. As what? Your queen? Senna tried to sound skeptical, but it came out more hopeful than she intended. As my mate, Cassian corrected. As my equal. As the woman I love more than power or position or anything else in this world. I'm still just a healer from conquered territories, Senna pointed out, even as she leaned into his embrace. You're the woman who saved my life, Cassian countered. The woman who can track scents better than any warrior. The woman who created an entire intelligence network just to keep tabs on me. The woman who faced down the entire council and a princess and didn't back down, pressed. He pressed his forehead to hers. You're strong in ways I'll never be, Wildflower. And I want you by my side. Not behind me, not beneath me, beside me. Even though I can't fight like a warrior, you fight every day, Cassian said fiercely. Against death, against disease, against hopelessness. You save lives while warriors like me take them. You're exactly the kind of strength this kingdom needs. Senna felt something in her chest finally relax. Okay. Cassian pulled back to look at her. That's it, just okay? Okay, I'll be your mate, Senna clarified, smiling through tears. Okay, I'll be your queen. Okay. I'll stand beside you and probably argue with you about everything and definitely make you drink terrible-tasting medicinal tea. Cassian's laugh was pure joy. That's all I've ever wanted. He kissed her then, soft and sweet and full of promise. When they finally pulled apart, Senna felt like she could finally breathe after 3 years of holding her breath. So what now? She asked. Now, Cassian said, his eyes dancing with mischief. We go back and face the council's endless meetings about coronations and mate bonds and political alliances. That sounds terrible. It does, he agreed cheerfully. But you'll be there, so it won't be completely unbearable. Such romance, Senna said dryly. I'm a warrior, not a poet, Cassian pointed out. But I love you. Is that romantic enough? Senna pretended to consider. I suppose it'll do. Just it'll do? Cassian demanded in mock outrage. Kind. Senna laughed. I love you too. Happy? Ecstatic? Cassian said, kissing her again. Though I'll be happier once we're officially mated and I can keep you from hiding in supply closets. I was taking inventory. 3 times a day? Quote. It was very thorough inventory. Senna defended weakly. Cassian just pulled her closer, and for the first time in 3 years, Senna let herself relax completely into his embrace. No more hiding, no more walls. Just truth and trust, and a future she'd been too scared to dream of. Come on, Cassian said finally. We have a kingdom to run. We? Senna raised an eyebrow. We, Cassian confirmed. I'm not doing this without you. And hand in hand, they walked back toward the palace, and whatever came next. 3 months later, Queen Senna of the United Territories stood on the palace balcony, watching the sunrise paint the kingdom in shades of gold and amber. Strong arms wrapped around her from behind, and she leaned back against her mate's chest with a contented sigh. Any regrets, Wildflower? Cassian murmured, pressing a kiss to the sensitive spot just below her ear. Quote, just one, she replied thoughtfully. She felt him tense slightly. What's that? Turning in his arms, Senna gave him a mischievous smile. I rather miss having the authority to order you to clean up your own messes. Now you're an alpha king, you have servants for that. Cassian laughed, the sound rich and warm and filled with joy, as if being queen has stopped you from ordering me around. True, she conceded, rising on her toes to brush her lips against his. Some things never change. And some things, he whispered, pulling her closer, change for the better. As their lips met again, Senna silently agreed. The past 3 months had been a whirlwind, a coronation ceremony, where she'd officially been named not just queen but also royal chief healer, establishing new protocols for medical training, reforming the guard to include women in all positions based on merit, navigating diplomatic relationships with kingdoms who weren't sure what to make of a commoner-born queen. It had been exhausting and exhilarating and occasionally terrifying. But through it all, Cassian had been beside her. Not above her or ahead of her, but truly beside her, asking her opinion, valuing her insight, supporting her decisions, even when the council disagreed. What are you thinking about? Cassian asked, pulling back to study her face. About how far we've come, Senna said. 3 months ago, I was hiding in supply closets. Now I'm implementing kingdom-wide medical reforms and apparently attending diplomatic banquets. You hate diplomatic banquets, Cassian observed accurately. I really do, Senna agreed. All that fake politeness and careful conversations. We could skip tonight's banquet, Cassian suggested hopefully. Claim you have urgent medical duties. We cannot skip the banquet honoring Princess Katerina's diplomatic visit, Senna said firmly, even as she was tempted. Especially since she's been remarkably gracious about the whole situation. Indeed, Princess Katerina had surprised everyone by becoming one of Senna's strongest allies. After the spell incident, she'd stayed for several weeks, and she and Senna had developed an unlikely friendship. Katerina admitted she'd learned important lessons about the difference between loving an idea and loving a person. And she was now focused on finding a mate who actually knew and valued her. Fine, Cassian sighed dramatically, but I'm claiming at least 3 dances with you. Only 3? Senna teased. I suppose I could manage 4, maybe 5. Actually, forget it, you're spending the entire evening with me. People will talk. People are always talking, Cassian pointed out. We might as well give them something interesting to discuss. Senna laughed, the sound carrying across the palace gardens. This being able to laugh freely, to tease and be teased, to love openly without fear, was worth every difficult moment. Cassian, she said more seriously. Thank you. For what? For waiting, Senna said. For not giving up when I was too scared to let you in. For arguing with your uncle, even when you thought I'd never know. For seeing me as an equal when I couldn't see it myself. Cassian cupped her face in his hands, his gray eyes intense. You saved my life, Wildflower. Not just with that kiss, but long before. You gave me something to fight for beyond duty and honor. You made me want to be better, to do better. If anything, I should be thanking you. Then I suppose we're even, Senna said softly. Not even close. Cassian disagreed. I plan to spend the rest of my life making sure you know how grateful I am that you finally stopped hiding from me. And I plan to spend the rest of my life making sure you don't get too arrogant about it, Senna countered. Deal, Cassian said, sealing it with a kiss. From below, they heard Jory's voice calling that the morning council meeting was about to begin. Duty calls. Senna sighed. It does. Cassian agreed, but he didn't release her. One more minute. Senna smiled against his chest. One more minute, paced. They stood there together as the sun rose higher, two people from completely different worlds who'd found their way to each other despite every obstacle. A warrior king and a healer queen, united not by politics or duty, but by a love that had survived misunderstanding, fear, and even magic itself. Below them, the kingdom was waking markets, opening, training grounds filling with new recruits, including women. Senna noted with satisfaction. Healers beginning their rounds in the newly expanded medical facilities. A kingdom slowly changing, slowly healing, slowly becoming something better. Ready? Cassian asked finally. Ready, Senna confirmed. Hand in hand, they walked back inside to face whatever challenges the day would bring. Together. As they disappeared through the balcony doors, the sunrise continued its steady climb, painting the kingdom in light and promise and hope for tomorrow. Some things did change for the better after all.